And Korea has a lot of things to offer. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Good to see you. So today I'm actually in a different part of Korea today called Gapyeong. Last Sunday's video I talked to you about the differences in culture and safety between the United States and Korea. And I just thought, wait a second, I've never really introduced my story about how I came to Korea and why I chose and continue to choose to live in Korea. So today I'm gonna talk to you about why I live in Korea. I really love being in the countryside. Can you guys see? Just look at all of the green. To start my story, I was living in France for 3 years and it was time for my visa to expire. So I thought I did not want to go back to the United States. I do not like living in the US. I found a job in Spain. I applied for the job in Spain. They said they wanted me to come. Then they said they didn't want me to come. So eventually I didn't get the job in Spain. Since I didn't get the job in Spain, I continued to search on the internet for other jobs. I looked on the internet for teaching jobs because in France, I was a teacher for 3 years while going to the university to finish my bachelor's degree. And I love France, don't get me wrong. France was a country where I was able to grow and to mature a lot into the man that I am today. However, I think that I lived up to all of the potential and I accomplished everything that I had on my list of things to do. Well, I continued to look on the internet for teaching jobs, and one day I found a teaching job located in Korea. I applied for this teaching job and I also found a job located in Japan. I applied for that job as well. I decided not to take the job in Japan and I came to Korea. My plan was to come to Korea for only 1 year. I just wanted to, have fun, save some money and eventually go back to Europe. But something happened in the course of a year that changed my entire perspective of living in Korea. And that was just the ease, the comfort, the interconnectivity of the country's transportation system, the friendliness of the people, and just the abundance of feel-good energy. Even though I had trouble with food and the language and logistics, banking, eventually I learned how to do them. And once I learned how to do them, I had a really big appreciation for this country. And you know what? There's something to say about going to another country and people treating you as though you belong. As you can see, I'm African American. I don't look Korean. However, the Koreans accepted me, and maybe I'm not going to be fully a part of their society, but they welcomed me with open arms. And to be honest, I'm treated better here than I'm treated in my own country, the US. That being said, I decided, why not give Korea a chance? Why not stay here, past the year that I initially intended to stay? I love being in Korea. I love this country. I know that there are other people, other foreigners who go through, some trials and tribulations while being here. Sometimes I hear on the news how some foreigners are discriminated against. Sometimes clubs or bars won't let foreigners in. Those are situations that aren't a telltale sign of how Korea really is. In every country, you're going to experience some sort of discrimination or some, negativity from some people. Once I, got comfortable living here in Korea, living in Seoul, the country started to open up a lot more. Opportunities started to present themselves. Maybe even opportunities that I would not have necessarily had in France or in the United States. So whenever I meet these friends, I always tell them that, I can't leave Korea now because I actually owe Korea a lot. Korea is the place where I matured into a man. I grew up here. I learned more about finances here. I learned more about relationships here. I learned more about how to treat myself here. I learned more about the world in general here. There are not many places that I can say that I would not attribute, those qualities to. I've been to many countries around the world as I stay often, but Korea is a place that I actually call home. As you can see in my travel videos, I've been all around this country and I continue to explore, even sometimes going to the same place, multiple times. I have no trouble whatsoever traveling around this country, talking to people. Of course, the culture in Korea is a little different than it is in the United States. In my opinion, Koreans are more introvert in public situations, especially if you are a foreigner. I think Koreans aren't scared of foreigners necessarily. It's that it's very unfamiliar to them and they don't know how to react in that new situation. So instead of doing something wrong, they would rather, not talk to you, and move on about their business. Maybe some people just don't want to talk to you because, they don't like you, but who cares? That's the way of the world. You're gonna find that here in Korea, you're gonna find that anywhere, but it's nothing to pout about. It's nothing to, go crying home and telling your friends and family, saying how, oh, in Korea, I experienced racism or I experienced discrimination because, this person doesn't talk to me or this person looks strange at me. Hell, people look strange at me here all the time. But I mean, it's because I'm so incredibly handsome. Who wouldn't want to, look at me? I look at myself all the time. This part of the video, I want to speak directly to African Americans or African Canadians or people of African descent who live in native English speaking countries. Whenever I travel around the world, I rarely see us represented, but especially for African Americans. A lot of us don't have our passports and we just stay in the United States and we expect for life to carry on, the status quo. I invite African Americans to come to Korea to live, to come to Korea to work, as a teacher or whatever other skills you have as an engineer. I'm not telling all African Americans to come to Korea to live. If you're gonna come to Korea, come with good intentions. Come to represent America. Come to represent, the African diaspora around the world. Come to represent your friends, your family. Come to set a positive image for, all of us who are part of the African diaspora. And not only that, to set a good image for foreigners. Korea is still opening up, and even though K-pop is widely spread around the world, Korea itself is still a little closed. So whenever foreigners come to this country, a lot of Koreans are seeing foreigners face to face for the very, very first time. Whenever I go out, especially to school where I work, or any place in Korea, I have to remember that I'm not only representing foreigners and the United States, I'm also representing the image of Africans or African Americans or people in the African diaspora around the world in the minds of Koreans. If you come to Korea and I'm inviting you to come to Korea, please don't come to Korea with derelict behavior. I remember a time I went to Busan with a couple of my friends, and there were a lot of military people who were celebrating the 4th of July, just walking around the city, having fun or whatever. A situation of note was when my friends and I went into a McDonald's, and in the McDonald's there were military people, but they were in civilian clothes. They were very, very loud, and they were constantly saying nigga, 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 the whole time. And Korean people were just looking at them, the people behind the counter at McDonald's, they're just looking at them. They don't know how to react. They still have to serve them because, it's a place of business. But I just looked at them and thought like, wow, it's very easy for Koreans to continue the stereotype of Africans or African Americans with behavior like this going on all the time. No matter how hard I try to provide a positive image of Africans or African people in the diaspora, there's always going to be, some people who continue the stereotype that Africans in the diaspora are very, rowdy. I'm not saying discrimination is okay. By no means is it okay. Or negative discrimination is by no means okay. However, I empathize sometimes with Koreans when Korean jobs don't want to give opportunities of employment to Africans or African Americans because of what they see in the media, perpetuated by people of African descent, especially in their country. I would be scared as well. I love this country. I love living in Korea. I enjoy my life here. I want to be a part of the process of Korea growing more and more on the international stage. That's the main reason why I've been here for 12 years. I believe there are other foreigners, and especially African Americans, because I'm American, who can also come to Korea and contribute positively to the growth and development of Korea on the world stage. However, if you come to Korea, please do not come to Korea with the derelict mentality and attitude. You come to Korea, you accept Korea for what it is. You have to abide by Korean rules, Korean laws, and if you do this, things will go well. You also need to put forth a positive image for African Americans in this country, because no matter what you do, there's always someone watching you. Please remember this. There's always someone watching you, whatever you do. And people remember. For tuning into this video. And as always, the views expressed in this video, they're just my opinion. However, it's just something that you can think about if you're considering coming to Korea, or if you already live in Korea, especially if you are an African American. If you come here, please make sure you're on your best behavior. Sometimes people aren't, and I know it sounds as if I'm being, condescending, but it's true. Whenever you go to someone else's country, it's always best to abide by their rules and make sure that you present yourself as if you are an official ambassador of the country where you come from. So thanks a lot for watching the video. I'll see you next time. Take care, hit that like button, subscribe, and see you later. Peace.